Seoul. Any reaction yet officially from the government to this development?
Hi, Zach. No official word from the government as of yet, but lawmakers from both opposition and ruling party lawmakers here in South Korea have voiced strong outrage, much like China has, to this visit by Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. And just when you thought South Korea-Japan relations couldn't get any worse, you have this happening all of a sudden. So you can expect the government to release a statement in any time now protesting this move. And some of the analysts, the early analysis coming out as to why Prime Minister Abe would do this at this point, some are pointing towards Prime Minister Abe trying to garner support from his conservative base. His approval ratings have dipped recently, but this could be as a way to kind of garner in those votes from his conservative support there. But here in South Korea, again, outrage. This isn't the first time a Japanese prime minister has visited the Yasukuni Shrine, and you can expect a similar reaction from the government at any point. Zaka?
And like you said, relations between Seoul and Tokyo already strained because of the Dokdo Islands controversy, which Japan calls Takashima. What does this do to that relationship? Does this take it to a new low, if you will?
Right, it probably will, because at this point, with South Korean President Park Geun-hye taking office earlier this year, there's yet to be even a summit or even dialogue. Recently in Indonesia, when the two leaders were at the same venue for the APEC summit, no meeting took place. There has been no high level meetings between officials from both sides. There is this common interest in terms of foreign diplomacy when you're talking about the DPRK, but when you speak completely generally with bilateral relations between Seoul and Tokyo, there really hasn't been any exchanges since not just President Park, but when Prime Minister Abe took office just a year ago.
All right, Shane, thanks for joining us. I'm sure this will elicit a very strong reaction there in Seoul. Officially, they haven't spoken yet, and I presume that's because of the holiday season, but we will soon have an official reaction. Already the sense that we're getting from lawmakers, both from the ruling as well as opposition parties in Seoul, is that they are very, very upset at this move by the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to visit the Yasukuni Shrine. Let's try and get expert analysis from Seoul. John Deluri is an assistant professor of Chinese studies at the Yonsei University. He's now joining us on the phone line. Thanks very much for speaking with us here on the News Hour. Let me start off by asking you, Shinzo Abe has been in office for a year now, and he's done this ostensibly to mark the first year in office. Why do it now? Why go in person to Yasukuni, knowing full well how much this will upset both the governments and people in South Korea as well as here in China? What's the message he's trying to send?
Well, in some ways it's hard to fathom from a South Korean perspective. He did say, I saw in a report that, he hopes this won't upset Chinese and South Koreans, but he pretty much knows, what the response is going to be here. I mean, I think the only way to understand it from a South Korean perspective is that domestic politics and the benefits that Abe gets domestically from his conservative base in Japan outweigh the costs of the reaction that this will provoke here. But, insofar as he wants to improve relations with President Park, I mean, there's absolutely no way he can do that if he continues to push in what is perceived as a revisionist and even militaristic direction. So, from the viewpoint from Seoul, this is going to look like domestic politics are more important than any kind of initiative to improve relations.
So how does the South Korean government, for example, respond to this? Obviously, there have already been strong statements from the foreign ministry, but beyond the rhetoric, what is it that Seoul can do? Is there anything it can do?
We'll see if they take any more proactive measures, but, the President Park has essentially refused to meet with Abe since they both came into office, and she's been under a lot of pressure from, I think, the United States, to heal the relationship, and she's holding firm. So, at a minimum, we'll continue to see frozen relations at the highest level between the two capitals. I'm not sure that there will be much more than statements of outrage, but again, they're already holding a very firm position, and this is going to ensure that it remains very firm for the foreseeable future.
And clearly that summit, if at all there was some talk in the pipelines, that summit's clearly not going to happen in the foreseeable future because of this. Thanks for joining us. It's John Delury from the Yonsei University in Seoul. For more analysis and a Chinese perspective, we're joined here in our studios by Tangjian Chuan from the China Institute of International Studies. Shinzo Abe knows fully well that this is going to upset a great deal both Beijing and Seoul, and he's still nonetheless gone ahead and done this. What is the message that he's trying to send? Has, according to his point of view and his administration's point of view, have ties between Tokyo and Beijing and Tokyo and Seoul reached a point where that matters less than domestic politics?
Yeah, from domestic approach, we can understand that this visit actually is a continuation for Shinzo Abe to mobilize the support from the, especially the conservative sides of Japan.
Yeah.
And from international approach, we can interpret actually this is a continuation again to challenge the interests of its neighboring countries, especially China, ROK. As the victims of the World War II, actually the visit is hurt for the feeling in these countries. I think I don't think this is a good celebration for Shinzo Abe to mark his 1 year office. Of course, it's a great achievement for himself. In 20 years, quite rare prime minister can have a 1 year office, but he made it. Yeah. I think this is maybe in his eye, this is a great achievement. But I don't think such a visit at such a sensitive moment is a great event for the neighboring countries.
What can China and South Korea do? We've already seen a very strong statement from the foreign ministry here in Beijing. We've seen very strong statements coming from Seoul as well. But beyond the rhetoric, beyond the statements, is there anything these two governments can do?
Yeah, I think it's not only a protest from the ministries related to the foreign affairs, but I think these two countries or other countries suffered the invasion of Japan during World War II, will give a further response in the future, and this is very important, for I think all the victims of World War II in Asia Pacific region by Japan, to have a good understanding, to show respect to the history here.
All right, Tangjian Chuan, I'm going to come back to him in just a moment and talk about Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's term in office. He's been in office for a year, and he's done this morning, visiting the Yasukuni Shrine, despite drawing the wrath of both Beijing and Seoul. He's done that to mark that 1 year anniversary. He took office after his Liberal Democratic Party, the LDP, won a landslide election in December of 2012. Speaking after his election victory, he said the Japanese people will be watching if the LDP lives up to its expectations, to its promises. A year has gone. We now take a look back at how Abe has led his party and his country in the last year. Zhang Yilei with that timeline.
Since taking office on December the 26th last year, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has visited 10 ASEAN member countries. He has also visited the US, India, Australia, and Africa. The moves are aimed at fostering stronger ties and driving Japan's economy. His frequent visits to other countries have led to Japanese media calling him Japan's best salesman. Meanwhile, after Abe returned to Japan's political stage, he quickly expressed a strong stance on territorial rows with China and South Korea. The Prime Minister has prioritized strengthening the Japan-US alliance. With the U.S. returning to the Asia-Pacific, joint military drills by the two countries have been conducted frequently. These have further raised tensions among East Asian countries. Abe has also strived to cover up Japan's history of militarist aggression. Abe delivered a speech in August, the anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II. Abe did not make any apologies to countries victimized by Japan's military aggression. In December, the Japanese cabinet approved a defense policy package that includes Japan's national security strategy, defense program guidelines, and a 5-year defense build-up plan. The package envisions 24.7 trillion yen, or $240 billion of military spending from 2014 to 2019, a 5% increase compared with the past 5 years. The government has stated that Japan will seek more proactive security roles for the self-defense forces abroad and will set new guidelines on arms exports. This is a major shift from the country's previous pacifist policy. Zhang Yilei, CCTV.
So that's a lowdown of how Shinzo Abe has spent his time in office the last 1 year. Many of his moves, though, have been criticized by neighboring countries, most notably China and South Korea. Japan's relationship with both these countries have been described as, quote, frozen by the Japanese press. Some believe that China and Japan have had their worst year, 2012-2013, since 1972. That's when both countries established diplomatic ties. Abe's support also has dropped. It's come down to about 54%. It used to be 75% in January of 2013. Opinion polls in Japanese newspaper Mainichi Shimbun suggesting that 63% of the Japanese public are hoping that Japan will soon start talks both with China and South Korea.
I'm very dissatisfied. Look at what they are doing, especially the state secrets protection law. Japanese politics is moving to the right. I'm not just dissatisfied about the protection of the public's interests. It is the worst time I have ever seen.
They're approaching Nazism. They started by trying to deliver international aid, and then trying to send troops to other countries. Now they want to export weapons. If it follows this trend, Japan will face war. This is extremely dangerous.
Well, there's been a clear rightward shift in Japanese politics under this administration of Shinzo Abe. What does that mean for that country? And more importantly, what does that mean for overall relationships that Japan has in this region and beyond? Tang Jianchuan is still with us from the China Institute of International Studies. How would you assess Shinzo Abe's role as Prime Minister, both domestically, and that's his primary job, but also internationally in Japan's key relationships with Beijing and with Seoul?
Yeah, generally speaking, Shinzo Abe has made his successful 1 year term. I think this is only I think it's short term for Shinzo Abe because he used a lot of abnormal leverages to encourage the economy to do some thing in enhanced relations with ASEAN nations, with its neighboring countries. But I don't. This is a very short-sighted step taken by Shinzo Abe. How can Japan has a long-term plan to have a good relation with all the neighboring countries, have a strong economy. In terms of the relations among China, South Korea, and Japan, I think this is a very tough for all the countries concerned. How can these countries to ease the tension since last year?
I mean, it's an interesting dynamic on the economic front. Shinzo Abe's government is leaning left. You've got massive monetary stimulus, you've got printing of currency, you've got massive government works contracts that are being given away. That's a leftward shift. But on the military, diplomatic, international relations point of view, it's a clear rightward shift to the cost of its relationship with both South Korea and with China. How do you foresee that political/military relationship in the next year or in Shinzo Abe's next few years as Prime Minister? He's already sort of warming up to ASEAN, to India, to the United States, again, at the cost of neighbors like South Korea and China.
Yeah, I think, Japan enjoys 2 periods of time for fast development after World War II. One, Japan enjoyed the War of Korea, in 1950s because, the United States and the Allied forces, took Japan as the logistic base. And at that time, Japan enjoyed the fast development. And then another period of fast development was in 1970s. Yeah. One reason, as we discussed before here, is the normalization or the good relation with its neighboring countries. With China, Japan and China normalized the relation in 1972, and also the good relation between China and the United States. So I think, economically speaking, Shinzo Abe might make it this time. As we discussed just now, it's only a short-sighted approach to encourage the Japanese economy to develop. But I think in the military or in the political side, we can see this is a very dangerous game, including the sharp increase of defense budget, recently announced by the Japanese government, and also, the army build-up, for the self-defense force. So this is a very dangerous or challengeable, a step taken by Shinzo Abe to the neighboring countries. It will hurt not only the security and the stability in this region, but also hurt Japan itself.
All right, we'll wait and see how this plays out. Clearly, there's going to be even more reactions in the hours and days succeeding this to Shinzo Abe's visit to the Yasukuni Shrine. Thanks for joining us, Tongjan Chuan from the China Institute of International Studies. We're going to take a break quickly. When we come back, we'll take you to Thailand, where political parties have finished registering for the elections in February. The opposition, though, is continuing to boycott the polls. We'll be live in Bangkok when we return.